So today we're going to talk about one of the most stressful parts of custody visitation, often seen by people that are going through high conflict co-parenting situations. Does parental alienation ring true to you? Because hands down, this is the most tragic, but also complicated and difficult situation to prove in family law. So let's talk about what it looks like. And today we're going to pair up not just my opinion, but also one of the psychologists that I talked to and get some of their feedback. But you know what? I'm going to put it in my own words from the notes that I took. So today on Gavels Down, Voices Up, let's talk parental alienation. Welcome to Gavels Down, Voices Up, where we flip the script on conventional legal discussions. I'm Rachel King, here to guide you through the murky waters of family law, estate conflicts, inheritance disputes, all of the dramas. We're not just talking about law, we're talking about how it affects your life, your rights, your future, and your money. From the courtroom to your living room, we bring you insights that matter. Dive into each episode ready to challenge, learn, and grow. Ready to change the dialogue? Let's begin. Gavels down, voices up. So parental alienation often starts to rear its ugly head or speak to you in the back of your mind when you're feeling like your relationship with your child is getting cut off or more distant. And this is different than if you separate or you divorce and all of a sudden there's a little bit of pullback. This is like, I had a really great relationship with my kids, and now really for no reason that I can think of. There wasn't a big incident. Nothing tragic happened. I didn't get remarried. I didn't have another child. I didn't abuse or have a blowout with my child. But for whatever reason, it's getting more and more difficult to have them come over to the house for visits. And our relationship seems to be getting farther apart in a non-normal or abnormal way. Parental alienation is different than the relationship or the morphing of a parent-child relationship as your child and you go through the growth process, right? So you're going to have a different relationship with your child at 2, 4, 6, 10, 12, 15, 18, and then all through adulthood. That's natural, right? You get a teenager, oh my God, the relationship you thought you had just went up in smoke. That's not necessarily parental alienation, though a lot of times those growing pains paired with parental alienation can really do a number on the relationship that you have with your child. So first, what is parental alienation and how would I define it? Again, this is based on my experience as a lawyer, talking to psychologists and really seeing it play out in court. So parental alienation is where one parent either intentionally or unintentionally interferes with the relationship between child and other parent. This can happen in very obvious ways, like bad-mouthing the other parent, limiting contact, making false accusations about other parent. Our kids, they see a lot. So when these things are happening, it's oftentimes in front of the kids, but even maybe more common, it's not directly in front of the kids, but man, do they pick up on it. What happens when these kind of parental alienation tactics occur is that slowly a wedge begins to form in between the other parent, the alienated parent, and the child. And alienation, again, intentional or unintentional, sometimes, well, not sometimes, always has a very serious impact on your child's emotional well-being. We know that it can be intentional, but what do some unintentional parental alienation, I guess, things, what are they? I've seen unintentional parental alienation occur where one parent says, oh my gosh, I'm going to miss you so much. I love you so much. I can't wait for you to come back. I'm going to be so sad when you go. And sometimes the parent that's doing this behavior thinks that it's actually helping their child, that they're showing their child how to express their feelings and all of the love that they have and really making their child feel important in their lives, but that's not what's actually going on. What's going on is that there's an immense amount of pressure that's being put on this child to think, oh gosh, I can't leave mom. Mom's going to be so sad. What am I going to do? And it can form a divide. Now, child doesn't want to go maybe over to dad's house because they're so worried about mom. It can also show up unintentionally by saying, oh, go over to dad's house. You're going to have so much fun. And when we get back, I'm going to take you to Disneyland and I'm going to take you for a chocolate and we're going to go buy gifts and we're going to snuggle and watch movies and all of the things. But when you get back, And you may think, well, that's when I get back or when a kid gets back, so it's no big deal. But actually, the whole time, you've had your child lose focus of the good time they're about to have with dad. And instead, they're focusing on how they can't wait to come back to mom. We see this sometimes with Disneyland dads, except that, and I say Disneyland dads loosely, that's just kind of the name that it's been given, though I've seen it with both parents. And that's where one parent likes to be the fun parent. Though one parent likes to be the fun parent, it doesn't always result in parental alienation. It results in parental alienation where it ends up being that your child doesn't want to go back to the other parent because they're so excited about what they're going to do. Another form of parental alienation, and this could be intentional or unintentional, is to say, oh, go to mom's house. You know what? And I'm going to take your sister and your step parent, and we're going to go to Magic Mountain, and we're going to have a sleepover, and we're going to do all these fun things. Maybe you are going to do that, but the fact that you're making it a point to tell your child as they're going away on visitation with the other parent, you're just having them feel all of the feels about what they're missing out on, and you don't want to do that. Again, unintentional or intentional, it can be unintentional parental alienation also if your child has a breakdown. And we see this a lot with younger children, like toddlers. They just start crying and crying and crying when they have to go to visitation. And many times the parent that's doing the alienating will go sort of above and beyond and over the top comforting and, oh, it's going to be okay, and all of these dramatics. And then even sometimes take it to the point that they think, oh, my child doesn't want to go to other parents' house. And so they start to interfere that way, when really your child might just be having a reaction of, yes, they're going to miss you and they don't want to leave mom or they don't want to leave dad to go to other parents' house, but they're going to be okay. This situation I refer a lot to, like the daycare scenario. Every time I would send one of my little kids when they were little to daycare, they would cry. They would have a complete meltdown when I had to leave them. And I got really good at giving them to the caregivers, turning around and walking away. And within a few seconds after me being out of sight, out of mind, my kids would be happy, happy, happy. And then when I'd pick them up from school or from daycare, they wouldn't see me and they'd be playing and playing and playing. And as soon as they got eyes on mom, oh my gosh, it was a mental breakdown. Sometimes these behaviors that your child exhibits doesn't necessarily mean they are having a problem or they don't want to go to other parents' house. Sometimes it's just kids being kids. And if you buy into it too much, you can be alienating your child. One of the things that's really important to understand about parental alienation is it's not just about one parent or your child being upset with one of you. It really starts to become parental alienation where it starts to affect your visitation time, your custodial time. Now the behaviors and the relationship is going so that you're not able to have your child. If your child has an attitude or gets into it with you or with other parent, that's normal. That happens in every single parent-child relationship. And it's important to understand that that alone is not parental alienation. Not getting along with your child, having them have an outburst doesn't result in parental alienation. However, the other parent has an opportunity to unintentionally or intentionally alienate because of the natural relationship swings that a child can have. Can you imagine if every time you got into it with your child, the other parent came over and said, oh my God, you're a horrible parent. Oh, our kid doesn't want to see you anymore. Oh, how dare you do that? That would be devastating, right? It would form a wedge. So when you're talking about parental alienation, understand that the ebb and flow and the disagreements that your child has with you or with other parents are not a standalone parental alienation. And the fact that your child doesn't want to come over because you just had a blowout doesn't necessarily mean it's parental alienation. It's the systematic pattern that is abnormal that's causing a wedge. Think wedge. And so what does that wedge look like? It's really, again, forming a divide and having your child reject you or reject the other parent. And it can be limiting contact, right? So maybe your son or daughter doesn't text you anymore. Maybe they don't want to come over to your house anymore. Maybe they're uncomfortable and the alienating parent is really taking advantage of this, setting up all of these scenarios so that your child has an excuse not to go, and they're like making it worse than it needs to be. That is parental alienation, where these situations are coming that allow a child or force a child to limit contact, limit visitation, and reject, make the child uncomfortable with the other parent. Remember, it can be calculated, but it can also be unintentional. And now for a quick break. This episode of Gavels Down, Voices Up is proudly brought to you by King Law Firm Attorneys at Law Incorporated. We're not just about winning cases, we're about making a difference. Whether it's family law, probate litigation, or standing up against elder abuse, we bring experience, empathy, and excellence to the courtroom. At King Law Firm, we're more than lawyers. We're your team, in your corner, advocating for your rights and making your voice heard. Visit us at thelawyerking.com and on the socials at The Lawyer King to see how we fight with you and for you. King Law Firm, attorneys at Law Incorporated, where your fight becomes our fight. Now, let's get back to today's episode. So what do you do if you're hearing this and you're like, oh my gosh, I am absolutely being alienated. I was right. First of all, my heart goes out to you. Devastating, devastating, devastating. And I will tell you, the more you can focus on your relationship with your child and put all of other parents' BS aside, the better off you're going to be. But how do you do that, especially when there's parental alienation involved? First, document your communication. I always like to tell people, reach out to your child as often as you want to, even if it's just a short text. Hey, good morning. Hey, thinking about you. Hey, I'd love to see you. Let me know when you're available. Hey, I hope school's going well. How'd that football game go? You want to reach out. You don't want to make your child feel bad necessarily for not responding, especially if they're being manipulated in a parental alienation situation, but you want to have not only the context so your child thinks, oh gosh, mom was there all the time, but you also want to have the documentation to show in court that this is what is going on, to prove that there is some kind of wedge, some kind of divide. You can also reach out to other parents and be like, hey, I'd really like to see, our son. Let me know when you guys are available. Hey, I'd really like to come over. Hey, I'd really like to whatever, so that you have a documented communication record. That can be through talking parents, text messages, emails. As a lawyer, I always prefer written communication. Any witness testimony, that's also really helpful. If there's family members, friends, teachers, anybody that is witness to some of these alienating behaviors that other parent is doing, can be very helpful. Ones that don't work so well are kids. I've never met a judge who likes a child to testify. So to the extent that you can limit your child's testimony, that would be great. And then remember, everything your child says without their testimony can be considered hearsay. So that's not very reliable either. You may not even be able to get it in, but you want to have other people that will testify. And here's my little caveat on testimony. Many people, and I know this because I call witnesses regularly, many people will tell you everything you want to hear and say, oh, of course I'll testify on your behalf because you're right. And then I issue the subpoena as the attorney, and all of a sudden their story changes and they get nervous. They don't want to. I can't tell you how many times I've had sports teams, sports parents, and sport groups, right? The nonprofit affiliation that will absolutely go to bat for the one alienated parent until it comes to testifying. And they're like, well, actually, we want to stay out of it. That's between you and other parents. And we just want your child to have a fun time. So as you're thinking about witness testimony, one, you want to make sure that they're not biased. A police officer may be more reasonable or more reliable than maybe your mom, who might lie for you no matter what, right? So think about the witnesses, but keep a list of all of the witnesses to parental alienation. Expert reports. Almost every time I've had to do a parental alienation case, I've needed a 730 evaluation, which in California is the family law code that allows for this big investigation to go on, or we've needed to bring in experts. So plan on that. And what do these experts do? They're typically psychologists, and they come in and they interview you, other parent, child, all of the people that are involved. If there's a step parent or siblings, they'll interview as many people as involved so that they can make a decision about what is going on, see if your child is subjected to parental alienation, or if they are likely to be susceptible to parental alienation, and then they can give some kind of guidance to the court. Experts are gold in most parental alienation situations, but like everything, you've got to have a good expert. So understanding your expert, understanding where their expertise is, and that they actually understand your side of the parental alienation. And I say that because if you're defending parental alienation, that's really different than if you're trying to prove parental alienation. Both sides, you probably want an expert. And then of course you want to have all the documentation of your parenting time violations. Again, you've got a court order in most cases because you're going through a hostile, high conflict co-parenting situation. So If your daughter or your son isn't coming to Friday night visits at 5 p.m., you want to at least send a text message to other parent, be like, I'm ready, I'm waiting, and have a documented proof of why your child didn't come, other parents' participation or condoning of your child not coming. You want to have a pattern that shows that your parenting time is being affected. If you can't do it via text message, Talking Parents, or a Family Wizard app, then even just a logbook of, hey, this is what it was supposed to be. This is what happened. I made this phone call on January 25th, 2023 at 4 p.m. Other parents said child was unavailable. I tried again at 6 p.m. Other parents said child was unavailable. Whatever it is, you want to have a logbook and some kind of record that your parental time is being interfered. And so then what do you look for when you're looking at your child? And this is something I'm ending with this because I think it is so important. When we're looking at parental alienation as a whole, we're looking at sudden changes in your child's behavior. If you've never gotten along with your child, you guys have always had kind of a combative relationship, and it's just getting worse as they become teenagers, that doesn't necessarily amount to parental alienation. Maybe you just don't have that kind of relationship. We're looking at really, really sudden changes. I saw my child every weekend, and we always had a really great time. And then all of a sudden, they don't want to come over anymore. That's problematic, right? That would be a sudden change. Negative comments from your child, right? So if your child, and people always ask me, they say, my kid is being coached, or my child just knows what they want, right? I see both sides. And the child will say things like custody, visitation, child support. They'll use like these very grown up words that really most kids are not privy to. If they're saying negative things or they're bringing up the court order, chances are they're being coached or they're being talked to about the custody and the drama involved in your high conflict co-parenting situation, and that's bad. So again, we want witnesses to what your child says, and we want a record of it. If your child says something, go ahead and write it down in a logbook. Keep in mind, every time you bring up something that your child said, not only could it be hearsay, but it's often going to have somebody say, well, you were interrogating them. Don't ask them everything they do at my house. Don't do that. So be prepared for the interrogation defense. And quite frankly, don't interrogate your kids. When they come home from other parent, all you have to say is, hey, did you have fun? If they want to volunteer information, trust me, kids will. If they have something important to say or something they want you to know, and you give them the opportunity to say it, they will word vomit all of it. Keywords, key triggers, negative communication about you, stepmom, children, or something that again is out of the ordinary, that can be a key that there is some kind of parental alienation going on. And then of course, like I've said over and over again, and is the biggest reason that people fall trapped or think that they're going through parental alienation is because you aren't having time with your children, or your child is resistant to everything that you have to do or your attempts to be a parent. In any case, parental alienation is really hard for the alienated parent. It's also really hard for your child because they're absolutely being thrown in as a pawn in this custody situation. So to the extent that you can, learn how to manipulate your behavior, learn how to change how you are co-parenting and interacting with the other parent and interacting with your child, just so that you can get through the 18 years while they're a minor and under the family law custody code, is really going to be great. Focus on what you can and what you have control over. Do everything that you can. Be as consistent as you can. Try not to make your child feel bad for the fact that they don't want to come over. Maybe they can't help it and they don't even realize they're being alienated. Be there supportive so that as soon as the family law court says they don't have jurisdiction anymore, you know that you and your child can rekindle that relationship, that you can reach out to your child, and maybe at that point your child will be like, oh, finally, I'll go and sit down with mom, or I'll go and have a conversation with dad. In any event, parental alienation is so hard. It's worth talking to an attorney. It's absolutely worth talking to a psychologist, because typically both of them are going to be needed if you go to court to try and modify for parental alienation. All of this and more in my book. So if you liked what I had to say, pop over to gettingdivorcednowwhat.com and buy my book. I appreciate it so much. Till next time. That wraps up another episode of Gavels Down, Voices Up. If you found value in our discussion today, please subscribe, leave a review, and share with someone who needs these insights. Your engagement helps us grow and impact more lives. I'm Rachel King, thanking you for listening and reminding you to speak up because every voice deserves to be heard.